Hello and welcome, I'm Kira the Scrivener, and today I'm going to be doing the Authortube Newbie Tag. If you're saying, I think you've done this before, that would be true. It is 2 years old, and I haven't done a lot of Authortube. I've discussed it before. I often feel very insecure talking about authorly related things simply because I don't always feel like I'm, there enough. But I am going to push myself to be more accountable, so if you're watching this or you're just my friend on BookTube, please keep me accountable and actually doing authorly things. I have written scripts. I have like so many author ideas that are written out and I'm just afraid to film them. I don't have insecurity. It's not a living thing in me. Anyways, I'm just gonna do this tag. It's slightly different. I got inspired because Margaret and Alyssa J did a collab with it. And I was like, I've been thinking about redoing this just to like reunite myself into the community. So I'm gonna do it today. So the first one is, how did you find out about Authortube? I don't think I ever like really discovered Authortube. Like back like 5-6 years ago, I started watching Jana Moresi and I didn't really realize that there was a community at all around it. I think I watched a few of Vivian Reese's videos, and then when in 2017, when I started doing my own BookTube channel, which again, I didn't watch BookTube prior, I started finding like Authortube things in relation to that and just slowly started watching it. It was never a discovery like it was for BookTube. And then 2, what genres do you write in? So this is a complicated answer. Primarily high fantasy. I do write urban fantasy as well, but I also write plenty of poetry. I started kind of with historical fiction and contemporary as well. I write nonfiction, like as in like all kinds of nonfiction. I write science fiction. I write paranormal sometimes, more ironic paranormal. I'm working on a book that I really, really enjoy that's just like kind of a parody of a lot of just paranormal stuff. And then I'm working on a mystery thriller with some magical realism in there as well. So just all across the board, I really write anything that I feel like. And then preferred writing tense, point of view, and category. So I exclusively write in past tense. I sometimes write in first person, but I primarily write in third person omniscient, like shifting viewpoints. I really, really like that. Whenever I read a book that's set like that, I just am so happy because it's not a very common writing style. But it's when you shift between, not even necessarily chapter, but you kind of know each other's thoughts, and they're just, I really love that. And there's some books that are done delightfully there. And I know some people don't like it, and I feel sad for them. I'm kidding. And then I write YA, but I also write adult. It really depends. Like, I feel like the book that I'm wanting to publish first would probably be new adult. The protagonists are like in their like late teens, as in like 19, 20, early 20s, but it's fantasy, and I don't know what it will be categorized. I don't think that I would call it YA. I do write some YA as well though, and like some that would probably be more middle grade and just adult in general. So all over the thing. I don't write children's books. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then, are you self-published, traditionally published, or yet to be published? I'm yet to be published. I don't have enough gumption yet to put my work out there, but my goal is 25, which is coming up way too soon. I don't have to think about it. I have goals to reach. That is mostly because I want to beat my sister who published right before she turned 26. So, am I a plotter, pantser, or plantster? I had to look this up. So plotter, I understood because obviously you plot a lot. Pantser, you just kind of go with an idea. And plantser is you plan a lot and then you just write. I believe that would be the best thing because I'm very meticulous about world building and about characters and about a lot of that stuff. But I don't normally that with like plot. And I feel like that's the opposite from a lot of other people because of the fact that I've always been character driven and all of my stories will be character driven. Because that's just the way that I like stories and the way that I write. So I need to know characters, and characters do develop and change as I write. I often tend to know where the novel will end up, but not at all how I'm going to end up there. And then I just write and I add into. But the world building and that has to be really built out for me. And I spend way too much of my time world building. I definitely overdevelop that. I'm pretty much like the modern J.R.R. Tolkien with like the Silmarillion and stuff like that. Like, so much unneeded world building, but I love it. And what is your dream publishing house, agent, all of that? I don't care. In the next like year or so, when I'm looking to like be querying, that's ambitious, but hold me to it. That is the plan in the next like year or so, to start sending out my manuscript and stuff. That's scary. I will be looking more into especially some of my favorite authors and some threads between the books that I like, because I kind of understand that. And because I feel like my book might be hard to categorize as well, I will have to specifically nail all of that down and what I want to see, but I haven't done that yet. Authortube videos you can expect from me, mostly like sociological, historical, and psychological, the idea of like looking behind world building again, because that's what I really like. Like a lot of the videos, that's why I feel so insecure, because a lot of them are about like writing process, which I don't really have a writing process. I sit down and I just write. But I can do a lot of talking about character development and a lot of like what affects you as a writer, and that's the psychological point and the sociological point of like what makes you as a writer and to be aware of yourself. It's like the counseling in me to be aware of your blind spots in writing so that you're more aware of those things. And then when did you start writing? The first time I physically wrote was March 2010, when I was like 12 turning 13, I mean like 6 months. But I've been developing stories and telling stories my entire life. It's just that was the first time I was able, with my dyslexia and stuff. I wasn't like writing. I didn't learn how to read until around that time. So I wouldn't have been able to physically write prior to that. I feel like if I had have been able to, I probably would have. And then we're just gonna awkwardly turn the page here. And then, what was your first story ever written? So my first story ever started was a historical fiction set in Canada in 1911 and follows into the First World War and deals with like racism and discrimination in Canada. Yep, that's what I was thinking about at 12 years old. Who would have guessed? And then my first completed novel, and I don't think this book will ever be published, the first one might be, and it's a contemporary that deals a lot with mental health and abuse and a lot of a variety of other things like drug use and teen pregnancy and all of that. And I wrote it primarily out of when I was a teenager. I completed it when I was 16, I think. And I've always been like the counselor friend, and I had a lot of friends going through a lot of things, and I didn't, obviously for confidentiality, just in friendship, I could never discuss what I was feeling about those situations. So I would write them into the book and like process them through that. I've always used writing as a means of processing my emotions. So a lot of it is incredibly heavy and also incredibly personal into things. Like I've always like mixed up the characters because I have lots of people in my life. So it's not like one character directly correlates to someone else in my life that was dealing with those things. But I feel like it would be a very hard book to publish without it being very autobiographical, which I wouldn't necessarily want. So yeah, I don't think that book will ever be published unless it goes over heavy revision. And then 10, authors that have inspired you. I would say C.S. Lewis, definitely with fantasy. The idea of portal fantasy and high fantasy, I think, is very centered in that. That's primarily the books that I had read to me over and over again as a child. And then through that, my sister as well. Like, even like the shifting omniscient point of view and like that being what I'm drawn to is very much my sister. And then I would say like Avatar: The Last Airbender. I realize that's not a book, but that series I think was what made me fall in love with character-driven stories. And just every bit, like I do very much agree with the fact that like best writing is kind of like not plagiarism, but like the idea that we steal things from every author. Like I don't steal ideas like straight out of the thing, but I think of that when I read something or I write something. I think of the fact that, oh, this was done like that and I like that. And that's kind of how I write a lot of the time. I steal from a lot of different sources, and it would never seem like that's where I got the inspiration from. Like, this is just a random idea. Like, I was reading, this spoiler, but I will do it in a non-specific way. I'm reading Reaper at the Gates. I finished it 2 days ago, and one of the characters is like the soul catcher, and they deal with like helping people into the afterlife. And through that, I got the inspiration of like, what would it be like if the Colosseum had a therapist that like once they were killed in the Colosseum, they had to have a therapist to like move on to the afterlife. Like, that's, you wouldn't read my story about a Colosseum and think that that was inspired by Reaper at the Gates and soul catching in like a Jin world, Roman inspired. Like, I guess it's kind of Roman inspired, but like the way I would write that would be nowhere near Ember in the Ashes or like the other dynamics of it. I was just like, oh, that's a cool idea to think about it. And like things like that. Like, I don't I just feel like I think a lot about like the themes and exploration of books while reading them, and that's from TV and shows and movies as well. And I always like write notes and like have ideas about things, but my sources are very, very wide and very myriaded. That's a word. Anyways, 11, do I schedule writing sessions or do I just write whenever I have time? I I do sometimes say like today I'm gonna write. Those are the days I normally don't write. I probably spend the majority of my free time writing. If I'm not reading and or like watching television stuff, which I don't watch a lot, I'm most likely writing books. Like I spend a good chunk of my life writing. And that's like I always have for the last like I have thousands probably of partial manuscripts. It's a voracious writing issue. And I think that's my thing is I really need to work on like focusing myself onto one thing because one of my goals for July, which I'm utterly failing at, is writing like 500 words a day. I probably write 500 words a day, just not of the same novel, which is problematic. I probably write like a few thousand words a day from different stories so that I have a lot of ones that I really, really like, and I find it hard to just focus on one story. Even though I have like things, I carry on a notebook that just writes down ideas too, when just living in life really helps me think about things. And then like I even did that a lot. Like as I said, I'm a counseling student, so I was just like, I have ADD, so I have a hard time focusing in classes. It's always been a struggle of mine. So like I used to like literally just write assignments in classes and then answer more questions than everyone else because I'm one of those kids that always has my hand up. But when I was in psychology classes, because it was such small classes at my school, I couldn't really listen to music, especially since when I cut my hair really short, it didn't work anymore. I couldn't hide it with my hair. I could now. But I would just have one side where I would write my psychology notes and one side where I would write stories. And a lot of like talking about the sociological and like counseling techniques and interpersonal and developmental parts of it really inspired a lot of my writing. So yeah, if you look at any of my school books, it's just half and half writing and things. And that's, I think, being a counselor is some of the huge inspiration into my writing. So during class, that's when I focus my writing. And then I look like I paid attention because I have a big thing for like respect of teachers, and I find that a lot of people don't respect professors, and it makes me really mad. And then 12. Do you write computer, typewriter, or mostly by hand? I need water for a second. I wish I had a typewriter. Anyone want to send me a typewriter? I can't afford one of those, but they're super nice looking. I feel like I make too many mistakes that would be dangerous though. I write primarily on the computer, but I do write a lot by hand. As I said, I carry a notebook around just for ideas. And Margaret mentioned this too as well. And whenever I'm having like writer's block or I'm thinking, because I'm so meticulous and careful while writing on the computer, which can be helpful, but when I'm like thinking that I'm stressing too much about the formation of sentences and dialogue and stuff like that, I will write by hand. And then 13, what are you most looking forward to in being part of Authortube? So I've kind of been part of Authortube for like 2 years. I haven't done very many videos though, mostly just community and accountability. Please keep me accountable. I really want to publish a book in the next few years, and I need to actually focus on my work in progress to do that. But I have so many different moods. It's difficult. Anyways, if you are a writer and you haven't done this so far, feel free to do it. I look forward to it, and happy reading and writing, and I will see you in my next video. Tell me what you write if you do write. Tell me what you would write if you're not a writer and you're just one, or what your thoughts are on my writing process.